Hey, so I'm going to do my second lesson, awesome lesson video. This is the top lesson I've ever done. For just a ton of reasons, it's still something I go back to nowadays. Now, there was information later on that I learned that I had to apply to this, but even at the time when it happened, my first year, probably second year in Sackville, which would have been 90, I don't know, 20 years ago, 90, 95, 94. Even back then, it had a lot of really awesome after realizations and after effects for me that got put into better and better context as time went on and I learned more. I'm going to have to put there's a couple academic lectures that I attended that really put some of this into context that I'm going to have to, I probably should have to do a vlog on it just to make this vlog make more sense. But let's get to the lesson and let people make their own conclusions. This is one of the few lessons also where it's the only one of the four where I think if the parents saw it and witnessed it, they wouldn't kind of be torn between whether it was a good lesson or a bad lesson. It's a very typical lesson for me, very typical. It's a lesson I do all the time. The difference in the lesson is the reaction of the kid, the skater, whose name is Krista. This was, thank God I teach some intelligent kids and they're able to make conclusions and statements and observations that make things clearer to me. That's such a wonderful gift to have in a lesson that you don't expect to be educated by your own students. Context. I don't need to put a lot of context into this. This was a skater I inherited from another coach that had very poor quality jumps. She had more jumps than anybody in her event, a lot more jumps than anybody in her event, but was doing terribly. She was literally coming last, second last, third last out of 12 to 16 kids. So, you know, there'd be 12 in her category. She'd come 12th, 11th. I know she came 8th out of 8th at one of the competitions. She came, and the people who were winning the events and medaling had much fewer jumps than she did. She had 5 doubles at the time in an axel, and the people who were beating her were just doing an axel, no doubles. And I know that doesn't process in people's head, but this is the difference in quality. Quality makes a huge difference in skating, huge. And this Krista had a very big quality issue. So when I took her over as a coach, this is probably, I'm going to say 8 months into me coaching her. When I took her over, I banned her from doing doubles. I said, you can't do all these things because you can't do them. They're terrible quality. I know you think you're landing it. I know that there are people out there who would understand that you were landing it. I know that you tell people that you're landing it. I know there are people who see you and think you're landing it. You're not landing it. You're not doing a double sow, you're not doing a double toe, you're not doing a double loop flip or lutz. They are all such poor quality they would never count in a competition as what they actually are. And not only poor quality, but poor consistency. But even if she was landing them every time, they would be out as far as I'm concerned. The quality was just not there. So we were on this continuing struggle to try to bring her up to what I considered, I think she was a junior bronze lady. Does that make sense? Axel, just axles basically in our category. Very few people had doubles. That sounds right. It's a while ago. Might have been senior bronze. No, it's probably senior bronze ladies. So she passed the senior bronze test, which means she landed a double on test day. And a lot of people get through the senior bronze test without really having a good double. No, it had to be junior bronze. It had to be junior bronze, because in most of her events, most people weren't even trying doubles. Very few of them were. So it had to be a junior bronze event. And the ones who were winning were doing nice axles, and that's it. So the way our lessons tended to go is we were working on quality of everything, quality of solo, stroking, presentation, arms, body line, body projection, head, arch of the back, just every single part of her skating needed a little more quality, and she was an intelligent, hard-working, she applied herself to her skating very, very well. She didn't skate nearly as much or get nearly as many lessons as I wanted her to have, but for what we did, she skated 1 or 2 days a week, registered 2 days a week, but was involved in so many other activities and sports that she often missed one of her days. So she was, let's say, 1.5 days a week. And I was booked on every session she was on, so she would get maybe a 15, 20, 25-minute lesson every day she skated. The process we did with her jumps was I started going through her singles and just improving the speed and quality of her landings and such various things like that, going through a backspin, better backspin position, and we hammered her axle. Just hammered her axle. And I'm pretty sure this was 8 months in, so we had been hammering her axle, maybe 4 months in, but we had been hammering her axle for, I'm going to say, dozens of lessons. And we had lessons where we had spent 20, 30 minutes just doing axles, walking through axles, explaining what a quality axle is and how she achieves that, the different stages she has to go through to fix her axle, what she has to work on her own, exercises, drills, etc., etc. Now, luckily, she was landing the axle all the time, so I had something to work with, and she was doing a backspin, so it wasn't the worst axle by any means I've ever seen, but she had, really poor technique throughout the axle, couldn't do it with speed, couldn't do it, on different patterns. A lot of major problems with the axle. And because I knew, and again, most coaches would probably say, let's go on to the next thing. That's about as good as it's going to get. But I knew, because of Krista, because of years of association with her, that she was capable of doing better, that she was capable of better excellence than she was doing, that she was capable of refining her technique and improving her technique to a level that she had never conceived of or was aware of. So that's what I was focused on. Now, I think there were the occasional long lessons, 20, 30 minutes, where I would go 10, 15 minutes into the lesson and pound the axle, pound the axle, pound the axle, and eventually say, all right, we've done all we can today, let's move to the double sow, let's move to the double toe, mostly double sow, I guess. But that didn't even happen very often. I didn't have long enough lessons where I could get enough done on the axle that I felt we could move on to the double sow. And eventually, I think at this lesson, at this point, I had made a rule with her that before I even did dance or skill lessons or spin lessons or stroking lessons, she had to show me a decent axle that was incorporating what we did in our recent lesson, or I would end her lesson and give it to someone else. Now, she didn't need that kind of incentive, but I thought I should make it really clear that this was serious stuff, that she had to improve her axle. She was capable of improving her axle. I wanted her axle improved. And I'm trying to think if I ever actually, and she was a little reticent to do her axles because she didn't like doing things of poor quality, and once she accepted that her axles were bad, and that's one of the reasons why she was not doing well in competition despite having more jumps, more higher level jumps than her competition. She didn't want to work on it anymore, or she wanted to work on it in lessons, and that was just not acceptable. We needed her working on it more often, all the time. Is that all the context you need? I better get to the lesson. I'm running out of time here. So the lesson was, I think I've set it up properly here. It was at the old Sackville Arena. I think it was on the second free skate. She came over. I said, we're going to do a free skate lesson. As every lesson, let's start with an axle. She skated around, she did an axle. It was really good. It was, it had been getting better, so I could do 10, 15 minutes on it, and it was nice, and then move on, and it was getting corrected. But this one was nice. And she came back, and I said, okay, let me see a double sow. And there was an immediate change in her that I didn't quite get right away. I knew something was weird, but she went and did the double sow, and she came back and she was smiling ear to ear, and I made a few corrections in the sow, and I was a little irritated that she was so happy. So I, even went further into criticizing the double sow and tearing it apart and telling her every little, a dozen different mistakes in it. She was a great student in the fact that there was no limit to how much she could take in mentally, so I could absolutely list every single problem I had in order and leave her for 2 or 3 days, and they'd be fixed. All of her problems would be fixed. She was amazing that way. So I really let her have it on the double sow. She smiled more and more and more, just big grin ear to ear. She went and did another one. And I think by the third one, she came back to me, and she just seemed to be euphoric in how happy she was. And I finally dawned, it dawned on me, but I'm like, what is going on here? So I said, Krista, what is going on? Why are you happy? I'm tearing apart your double sound. Most people are not happy when I am deconstructing their elements and criticizing them. And she said, she thought about it for a second, because I don't think she consciously realized why she was happy. And she said, how do I phrase this? I don't know how she phrased it, but she said, you didn't have any corrections on my axle. And instead of spending 15 minutes on it, we went right to double sow. That's the first time we've ever done that. And we both sat in silence for a second, and she was, and I don't know if she verbalized this or if I did or what, but she said, basically you have just told me, without saying anything, because you didn't say anything, you have told me that our 4, 6, 8 months of work on the axle has just paid off, and I have done an axle that meets all your requirements, all your criteria, all your standards for a good, strong axle for my level. I have succeeded in mastering this jump that we've been bending over backwards and breaking our back to try to fix. I mean, the lesson went on, but that was essentially the message of the entire lesson. And I went home thinking, my God, one of my students gets me. One of my students understands what's going on here. We both have the euphoric feeling of a great axle after months of work. Neither of us had to express that in words. I didn't have to high-five her. I didn't have to say jump up and down and clap and scream. She got it, and she got it in her soul, in her heart. She understood that an amazing thing had happened. And not that I had acknowledged it, but that she had fixed her axle to the level where I could not criticize it, where I was unable to criticize it, where I was unable to find correction. And she took incredible personal value in that. And it really, you can imagine where that realization leads for me. After that, I found other students who had kind of realized the same thing, that if they're doing something and they come back to me, and previously I was giving them 10 corrections, 5 corrections, 5 corrections, 4 corrections, and they come back and I say, good, let's go to the next thing. There's this realization that they have, oh my God, David can't criticize this. That means it must be super, super good. It's like getting a massive, massive compliment without me having to say anything. And parents don't get this at all. They don't understand it, because they don't follow the course, the flow, the logic of my lessons. But the kids seem to get it. And this was the first time where I had a kid not only get it, but when I questioned her on it, be able to consciously verbalize it, be able to point it out to me, and it was the first time that I realized why there was such a difference between why kids loved my lessons and appreciated my lessons, and parents often do not. Because there's no way a parent would watch that lesson and get the same message from it that Krista did. Krista's message was, David is super pleased with my axle. My axle is awesome. We did an amazing job. I have accomplished an amazing thing. The parents would be, yeah, he didn't high-five her. He didn't jump up and down and clap. He didn't demonstrate across the ice that he was excited about something my daughter did. And yet I did. I did all of those things. But I did them in a way that parents, the public, the people around me, don't often recognize. Bye.